All right, guys, he joins us weekly to talk all things Gamecocks football. Thursday this week, normally Tuesdays, but either way, our good friend JC Shurburtt, the Big Spur, inside the Gamecocks, his show as well. And, of course, he's been running around like crazy with the transfer portal, NIL, the madness that has ensued. And, again, we appreciate him taking his time here to chat with us. JC, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you and happy to be talking with you today.
Absolutely. Sorry about Tuesday to the audience out there, but good to be here today talking with all of your audience and yourself. And it certainly is a very busy time. It's crazy, I thought it couldn't get any crazier than last year, but lo and behold, this is a new year and it's a lot more crazy.
Yeah, and JC, I wanted to start there, and I'm not necessarily asking you to pull back all the layers, if you will, but I mean, detail your day-to-day, your life right now since the transfer portal opened. And even before that, because before that, we were getting reports of this guy's entering the portal, the Juice Wells stuff happened. We're seeing the Garnet Trust execute on deals. I mean, it's got to be – you and I have talked off air about how different it is now versus, say, 10 years ago before all this happened. And December was kind of a downtime, and you were looking forward to February 4th or whatever the signing day was. And now with the December signing day, with the portal, with NIL, I mean, you got to be running around like crazy right now.
Yeah, I get up, pretty early in the morning. I like for about 4 my time, so about 5 y'all's time. If I'm there, it's 5 that time. I'll have some reflection time for about 10 minutes, and then I get to work. Because there's other things I have to do where my phone does not need to ring. And I don't get calls that early in the morning. Well, then about once everybody wakes up, my phone pretty much goes nonstop. Through the evening. There's message board responsibilities, obviously, on Big Spur. There's NIL stuff with Carolina Rise, obviously, that I'm in the thick of. Because we all work together. Garnet Trust kind of has signed, but we all kind of work together. We're on the same team, really, as far as that goes. It's not a competitive situation, as I've said. But so I'm in the thick of that. And then, we got the show every day. I got JC and Morgan, lucky for us this week, JC and Morgan, we decided to go live during the playoff selection on Sunday because Mike travels around and calls games and stuff. It's basketball season for him. So he gets to go on the road and, cover a sport that not everybody's quite into just yet. So that's good. But, so there's a lot going on. Plus I'm getting married December 30th and, it's the second one, so it's not like her and her parents are planning it. It's kind of up to us. It's a sort of a destination wedding down in West Palm. So today I'm on the phone with caterers and the Cuban restaurant, Don Ramon's Restaurante Cubano, which is where we're having I guess it's more of a welcome dinner than a rehearsal dinner, but had to pay that deposit. So, man, Christmas is coming, and it's a busy time to be JC Shurburtt right now.
That's why they pay JC Shurburtt the big bucks, my friend. You deserve it.
I hope so.
JC, on that note, again, things are changing. The landscape is changing on a daily basis, right? You think something is one thing, and then it's another thing. The latest news is that running back Mario Anderson intends to enter the portal. I say intends because I don't think technically his name is in the transfer portal. It's an interesting thing, right? We're getting reports where it's like, this guy's going to the portal, then 48 hours later, they're like, hey, this guy still hasn't entered the paperwork. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's so fluid and can change. But where do we stand right now with the Mario Anderson situation? I know there was some speculation that maybe it's bad advice or it was something where he pulled the rug out from under, changed his mind last minute. We also know Rocket Sanders is going to be on campus this weekend visiting. What's the latest with the Anderson stuff? And I mean, where Carolina sits right now, odds he may come back, just the overall outlook of that.
Yeah, and every situation's different, and people will look at it and go, well, my gosh. And look, I want to talk about so the other 14 guys that announced they're going in the portal or whatever. I know maybe some people ask about a Mega Blake or whatever, but really the focus or the guys that sting are Mitch Jeter. And I'll tell you right now, that had nothing to do with NIL. Weird enough, right? He's convinced that if he can go someplace a little quote unquote higher profile, that he can more easily get to the NFL, and he's graduated. So, and that's the thing too. Some guys like Keir Thomas, remember when he was here and he hit the transfer portal, went to Florida State. I mean, Keir had been there 5 years, and he just wanted, because he grew up a Florida State fan, for his last year to be something different. Tonka Hemingway looked into doing that and decided ultimately it was best for him to stay at Carolina. So that's what you're kind of battling against too. Some guys are just like, "I've been here long enough, got my degree. Maybe I want to." It's the same concept as people taking a sabbatical year after they graduate and going and hiking around Switzerland or whatever. I would compare it to that. Football, a little different, but they just want to maybe go do something different. So that's fine too. So Mitch sort of that stung, but it was not at all NIL. In fact, I think whatever South Carolina was going to give him, it was really competitive for a kicker. I mean, very competitive. I'll use that term, competitive, highly competitive. So there's that. Juice was a money situation, but man, without giving away any kind of secrets, it wasn't like we were talking about a ton. And some of the numbers out there about what Juice is actually getting last year are way high and wrong. Receivers with his ability probably don't fetch much more than, a lower number than many of you would think. I saw somebody talking about, he's going to get SEC quarterback money. I'd be surprised. Just I'll put it that way. I mean, I'd be shocked, actually. And it's not that he's not a special player. I mean, you're not going to get much better than Juice when he's healthy and ready to go. But so that's kind of a money situation. Now Mario also is, but it's different type. In terms of what I would call maybe financial needs, like that was why Anderson was kind of talking about going to the NFL, and I thought, yeah, that's probably bad advice because I don't know quite that he's done enough to even warrant like getting in the right situation undrafted free agency wise, which running backs can get on a roster. I mean, Rico Dowdle's an example of this, man. I mean, Rico's what number? He's all the way up to number 2 now, and probably could be the starter one day for the Cowboys. And that's just the nature of that position. I always tell running backs, or my opinion is, I don't ever give anybody advice, but my opinion is with running backs, if you have a chance to go, because the NFL chews you up and spits you out, and they're looking for fresh legs, and you may be sitting on a roster where somebody's in a contract year, and they're like, well, he's wearing out a little bit. Let's jettison him, and we can start, Mario for a little while, till we get somebody else, and that's just kind of how it goes. But his situation, he's financial need wise, without getting too much into it, and it's a different type of, I guess, financial need. And so you understand it, but it was interesting, Chris, to me that he signed with I knew his old agent. I don't know the new agency, but his old agent was a really good guy, and got him some deals and stuff. But it's kind of funny. He signs with a new agent, and then all of a sudden hits the portal. So somebody somewhere thinks they can get him something. I will say that, South Carolina, as far as on that end goes, they haven't given up on him coming back. It didn't really have a lot to do with Rocket Sanders. I think Gamecocks are going to shoot their shot with Rocket and see what happens. And it's a good sign Rocket's visiting this weekend. But there's other running backs out there too. It's not like Carolina was going to just, no matter who was coming back, stand still and do nothing with that room. You have to. They struggled this year a lot just because of depth, and you get banged up at that spot. You struggle with injuries, so you really need to be 5 deep and 5 good ones. I think in this league, just as insurance against injuries and things of that nature. So, yeah, sure, they probably welcome him back, but everything, a lot of things revolve around money right now. So that's the deal there. But yeah, those are the 3. The rest, it's unfortunate, Chris, because you sort of look and 14 is a big number, and you're like, well, what were they doing recruiting wise? I don't know that this won't be more common as we move forward, though, with the ability to sign as many guys as you want and just having kind of honest conversations with people about where they fit in terms of playing time. I think all the rest of them really are directly related to playing time, role on the team, where you see yourself, all that, which is pretty standard. That's kind of how guys used to transfer. And now that you don't have to sit out a year, it's easier to make that decision, and go, okay, I can play here next year or there. But those three are the ones, and heck, I guess Carolina lost four good ones last year, or four starters last year. So if basically it would be two, because Juice didn't really start this past season. And I think you take that when you look at other teams. I mean, Clemson, I think, lost two starting safeties, one starting safety and a key backup. Got in the portal, including Mabuku, who Clemson kind of found him and developed him, and now he's rolling out. So wants to be closer to home. So every school goes through this, and I think South Carolina, if provided there are no more surprises, which you can't rule out in this situation, I think Gamecocks are actually in much better shape than they could have been.
JC, you talk a lot about how NIL education is really important. And I want you to speak directly to the audience this next question I'm about to ask you, because, we've seen NIL create great opportunities. And I think it's great to compensate guys that, again, have worked their butts off to create value around their name, right, by their hard work, their play on the field, their value as a player, an asset to a program, whatever. But as well as I do, NIL is a lot like everything in life, to where, it takes a lot, for example, to build up trust, but it only takes one action to break trust, and then it's really hard to get that back. So for every good thing that has happened in NIL, and this is far beyond South Carolina, but we're obviously going to use South Carolina here. For every good thing that has happened, a Mario Anderson thing happens where fans look at it like, man, you took a dude from D2. You gave him an opportunity at the SEC level. He thrived. And now he's jumping ship. Then you got Juice Wells, which I don't really even have to go in that one, but like last night, he's in the facility getting his hair cut, talking about Carolina people are crazy. So, and I know you've seen a lot of the chatter on social media about NIL, people with their thoughts, their opinions, they're upset, right? And it makes sense. But what do you want to say to the folks about, because NIL is something we have to embrace. I mean, everybody does, right? I'm sure, again, Clemson people probably feel the same way. There's Texas A&M, they're dropping like flies. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And each respective collective, people have got to circle the wagons in their own respective way. But I mean, what would you say to the fans listening, Gamecock Nation as a whole? Because, again, it's all the good things that have happened in NIL. It hurts to think about that, like a Juice Wells could set this thing back. That's unfortunate that one guy could do that, but when it's a player of that nature and then he's acting the way he is, I mean, it's tough for a lot of people to stomach. So I'll let you speak to that.
Well, and then the fact he didn't play this past year, and people, Gamecock fans, I think
it's pretty well known that he could have. Let's just call it for what it is.
I mean, especially toward the end, there's no question. But I'll say this, a lot of fans making comments on social media, I'd venture to say that their investment in NIL pales in comparison to the people that, actually put the money in for Juice to return last year and think about how they feel. I'd venture to say many of them, judging from the comments, because one breath they'll say he stole money from us, and then I don't support NIL. Well, then he didn't steal from you, brother. Sister. You didn't help. I mean, what are you complaining about? And I know that's the concept of it. I think what fans need to realize is, and we do live in this world where it's kind of a say anything world. And all of a sudden, everybody has a voice, and I think there's a lot of positive things about that, Chris. It allows, folks like you and me to not have to go work for one of the worst businesses in the history of businesses, which is local radio, to get our voice out now, right? We don't have to worry about those guys. And that's beautiful, man. I love that. But, on the other hand, there's a lot of noise in the system that used to not be there. I would encourage Carolina fans, and it's hard. It's kind of the same concept as when you lose a recruit. Don't show your ass. Just don't. Juice Wells deserved complete silence and not a reaction about it at all. No reaction. Just move forward. It hurts. Yeah, it stings. It is very new. And new things, sometimes we react 10 times more emotionally than maybe just the standard old, we lost a 5-star at the end in recruiting or whatever. But what that does is it doesn't change Juice's mind. It doesn't make him feel guilty. He's made his decision, I guess. Well, that haircut thing was kind of weird, but I guess that's one. And then two, you're going to hurt yourself with other players because they see that. And these kids talk. And I'm sure there's venom from other fan bases towards players too. But right now, it's so critical at South Carolina to kind of get some alignment and everybody row in the same direction, that when you just kind of fall off a cliff like that collectively, and it's not everybody in the fan base, it's probably a small percentage, but the perception, which a lot of times that becomes reality in the sport, is that everybody just like turned on the guy, blah, blah, blah. And so you create a victim out of somebody who's definitely not a victim. That's number one. Number two, as far as collectives and NIL goes, and I kind of brushed back on Avery Wilkes from the state the other day when he went off and started, I would never give money. You're a sucker if you give money to NIL. Okay, so here's the reality, right? And I don't tell people how to spend their money. And I know that it's unfair to ask fans to fund these things. I don't think when you look at the price point for NIL that it's ridiculous. I mean, you're talking average member on Rise and Garnet Trust both is probably $30 a month, and that's pulled up by some people that can afford to give, a couple of hundred, 1,000, or whatever. Most of the time, it's around $15 to $20. So the price of a meal these days. And so, I don't think that's egregious. I think the theory, I agree with everybody. It's unfortunate that it's come to this, but here's the choice. You can either embrace it and not work against it. I'm not saying give your money, because I don't tell anybody how to do their money, but people out there actively working against it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Don't work against us. Don't sit there and, because you don't believe in it or want to do it, don't sit there and tell everybody else not to. That just causes somebody maybe on the fence to go, yeah, he's right. Because number one, you're not changing it. All you're doing is hurting South Carolina. You're not changing the NCAA's mind. You're not changing the SEC's mind. You're not changing anybody at Carolina's mind, because Carolina's got to compete. You're hurting South Carolina directly if you do that. No matter what the opinion is and the thought process is. So don't do that, because it's a fact of life. I mean, you can't, hey, yeah, let's all get rid of the collectives. You think Georgia's going to do that? You think Clemson's going to do that? You think North Carolina's? You think Tennessee, who had the first collective? Those guys were flying around in private jets. Jesus, but it's don't do that. South Carolina's still way behind, and it's getting better because the more people know about it that they can directly help, the bigger it gets, and it's a better situation this offseason than it was. But just because you're upset that Juice left. Juice is one guy, and the vast majority of everybody else they don't operate that way. That's A. And B, when you do things like, want to tear down the collectives or whatever, or say things like the collectives are the problems. Not here, brother. If it weren't for Garnet Trust and Carolina Rise, it'd be very bad. And so I would just encourage people to use some common sense here and understand that you're not helping. And if you want to know more about it, like how it works, please drop me an email. I can explain this stuff to people. I mean, it took me a while to learn about it, but I'll be glad to explain it to you, lay it out, and kind of show you what the deal is. It's not as, I think sometimes people see these dollar figures and they feel helpless. Oh God, they're getting $4 million. There's a rumor today, Carson Beck wants $4 million to return to Georgia. I'm like, well, good luck. If I'm Kirby and those guys, I'm like, oh, well, you have a nice. We'll see you. Gunner Stockton, come on down, dude. Because I mean, look, that's ridiculous. But that's not true. That's probably not true. So I would just encourage everybody to keep an open mind about it. First and foremost, if you're against it, don't work against it. And please don't bash players that leave, because that player doesn't care. It just kind of reinforces his decision. And then, somebody else may see that's interested in South Carolina going, oh, my gosh, these people, I'm not they want me to be their hostage or something if I go there. I mean, it does work that way, especially, you got to understand kids too. Like, we know social media is social media. It's not real life. So does Shane Beamer, apparently. But to some of these kids, it is. So you don't want to do that, like, psychologically. So that's for the fan base out there. That's just what I would encourage. I'm not asking anybody to give money. I said, do it with your money what you want. I think it's a great investment because you help the Gamecocks win. And I think for the first time ever, fans have a direct impact. You don't have to give them money to hire a coach or build a building or upgrade the stadium and then pray. You can directly impact a roster, which is huge. Everybody wanted Mark Kingston gone last year. Carolina Rise provided him with some resources to get some players back. Boom, super regional. We did twice as much this year, and they could probably get to Omaha. It works, regardless of who the coach is, right? It's not about a coach or being mad or I'm not going to do that until there's changes. That coaching and all that's different. That's Gamecock Club. That's seats and season tickets and all that. This is a totally separate thing that directly allows you, the fan, to have the power to impact winning and losing more than at any other point in the history of college football. And that should be exciting, regardless of the fact that it's a crazy circus and negative and all that goes through. If you look at the bright side, as a fan, now you can have a direct impact. And you don't have to worry about coaches or anything. It's direct. It's easy. It's transactional. Just anyway. So that's probably that would be my message to the Gamecock Nation.
And again, I would highly encourage anyone listening, again, like you mentioned, JC, if they have any questions, reach out to you.
Sure. I'm glad to answer.
Rise. Yes, and you will answer those. Getting back to the portal, the stuff again, we're only, on our 4th day in this thing. So that's the crazy part. We got a long way to go. In regards to South Carolina's roster, I think, too, what folks have to keep in mind, and again, this happens across college football, not everyone is leaving voluntarily. Some guys are clearing room on the roster, or at least Shane Beamer and his coaching staff are having very realistic conversations, right? End of year meetings of, hey, this is where you sit. This is probably what would best benefit you, et cetera. So just keep that in mind. But do you see more turnover on the roster via the portal? And JC, I'll just ask you point blank. Nick Emmanwori is a name that folks keep bringing up. Ole Miss apparently was in town yesterday. They want Juice. Some folks are thinking they want E-Man. What's the latest on that?
They're not allowed to talk to Nick. He's not in the portal. So so there's that. But
maybe Lane Kiffin's just playing tricks on us all. I know you saw him post the golf cart. That was a fun day on social media yesterday. That was entertaining.
Yeah, and I'll not, if you go back through his Twitter, he posted something. He was in Fayetteville in Arkansas.
Yeah, I think he just kind of toying with people. Maybe I don't know. But I don't know if you saw Taylor Edwards and a Ole Miss staffer kind of got into it, like going back and forth. They posted Juice's car. It is, I don't know. It's hard to keep up with, put it that way.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about Taylor. He's a little different. He'll get into a Twitter battle or two, and I think Carolina needs guys like that, like Taylor, who does a fantastic job. I would not want his job right now at all, ever, but yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Nick came back this past year, right? And Nick had some opportunity. However, some of that opportunity you heard about through the grapevine was not necessarily what the reality was, and I think he played really well down the stretch, and sort of knowing, what, for lack of a better term, what his deal is and what it could be. I don't think he'll go anywhere. I think he likes to kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say keep the door open, but I mean, he's the guy that's not going to delete his ex-girlfriend's numbers out of his phone. How about that? But it's okay, because a lot of those guys I know they're my friends. They're happily married with kids, and that chick still texts you every now and then. Oh yeah, we're just friends, But let's just say that he's probably, he's a very friendly guy, and obviously great player and deserves what he gets, and I think he'll be fine here. But I agree with you. That's a name that just from my standpoint, I'm still watching it just because there's just too much chatter out there. But when you kind of check on it behind the scenes, that's not really a top 10 concern at this moment, just because of the deal. He's well taken care of. I'll say that.
And JC, you mentioned that Taylor Edwards is not someone you envy his job right now. I don't envy the job of Shane Beamer, who's on the road right now recruiting, and all this madness is taking place. And then people are wondering, well, where are the coaching staff changes as well? Let me first ask you about, again, there's guys coming to campus this weekend, next weekend, I think, transfer portal guys. Some of the top names you're hearing that maybe South Carolina's in good standing with. We've heard Jaden McGowan. We've heard Will Shepard. We've heard, obviously Rocket Sanders is coming to campus. We've heard about some FCS guys. We've heard some O linemen. And then on the coaching staff side, do you still expect changes? And would that be more like an early January thing? Would it be after some of the dust is settled in? I mean, it's crazy to think, JC, we've literally got signing day in 13 days. And I mean, it's weird how like that's completely taken a back seat almost to the transfer portal stuff, although it's really important. But just the latest on the portal front. On a positive, guys, South Carolina maybe in a good position to sign, and then the coaching staff stuff, just what you're hearing across the board.
Yeah, I'd probably start with Jade McGowan from Vandy, in-state kid, supposed to come back. I mean, there's never any done deals, right? These days, especially. But I think Carolina's in good shape there. I think with Gerald Kilgore, Jalon's younger brother, who's actually a really good. If you watch his tape from Tennessee Tech, dude, that guy can play. He's a converted quarterback, but as we know from what we've seen at Carolina, sometimes converted quarterbacks do work out in the defensive backfield. So you like him. Will Shepard, it's gonna be tough. I keep hearing Georgia with him. I don't know that for sure. I do think if you get McGowan, depending on their relationship, you do have an in for a visit. He's from Louisiana. So I would always watch if LSU got involved. But he's a shoot, man. He missed some time this past year, but he's one of the better receivers in the SEC. I watch him, and I don't know like what he does super some guys are fast guys, some guys are ball skill guys, some guys are route runners. He just does everything good, fast enough, big enough, good enough hands, great route runner, productive. He's just productive, and that's the kind of guy in the portal you want. Probably a lot like Dominic Lovett last year from Missouri that ended up going to UGA. At running back, you mentioned Rocket Sanders. Finally, the rumors after all these years. He sets a visit to Carolina first and foremost. I'll remind everybody.
On that note, JC, I was just going to say, I literally heard last year, a couple hours before kickoff in Jacksonville at the Gator Bowl, hey, by the way, Rocket Sanders to South Carolina. I never said anything, obviously, but literally heard that last year. So kind of ironic.
I've been hearing that, and Jimmy Smith is running backs coach for years. So, well, hey, here we go. Now he's visiting the Gamecocks. Carolina was number 2 for him. Bobby Bentley almost thought he had it, and then I think Justin Stepp was because he was a receiver out of Rockledge, Florida. And a guy like that, NIL wise, you're gonna, he's gonna have some expectations. He's also probably worth it, to be honest. The one thing I keep getting back to, that there's talk out there, it's just buzz that maybe he wants to get closer to home because of his family. Rockledge is on the Space Coast, about a little southeast of Orlando. So what, you're talking about 7 hour drive versus maybe Florida State, which is up and over, maybe 4. And if you get Gainesville, obviously, because they're talking about ETN getting in the portal down there. So is proximity going to play a factor? Does he have enough time to wait on all these guys to offer, though? I mean, the visits are this week and next week, and that's it. A lot of these guys are going to have to make decisions. So he would be a gigantic pickup. Dylan Smothers, the freshman from Oklahoma that was a 4-star guy out of Charlotte, I think is kind of on that list with the running back. And then Marcus Carroll, who's visiting Missouri this weekend. He I just got a text about Rocket and NIL. How about that? Popped up on my thing. He's a baller. Marcus Carroll's a baller. If you remember him for Georgia State when he came up here as in 2022, he was good. This year he rushed for 1,374 yards. He rushed for 100 and something, I think, against LSU in Baton Rouge. A lot like Mario Anderson, but probably a little bit more elusive in the open field. And then Don Chaney Jr. is a guy they're going to have to really be comfortable with his injury situation because he's had a couple of bad ones. But you still don't close the door completely on him. Receiver, there's a kid from Purdue whose name I can't pronounce. It's a hyphenated Abdur, something like that. But he's one to keep an eye on. Also, Jaron Brown, he's Jaron or Jared Brown from Coastal. That dude's a baller. No problems at all if they get him. He's really good. Had a really good year at Coastal Carolina this year. And please don't take that as the whole board or everybody they're targeting. Those are just the names off the top of my head. And who's the tight end from Harvard? Neville, who's coming in this weekend. That's probably what they need at tight end. They need a guy that's kind of a dude that can block and catch and can kind of do it all out there because you got Josh Simon coming back. And then Michael Smith is kind of that type of guy. He'll play. Elksness, Cox, McKeska, you still want to give them a little time, but if you can get an older dude to kind of shore that up and let those other guys come along slowly, I think that's a major positive for that position. So watch out for him as well. And I would love to break down the defensive line targets, but some of those guys aren't in the portal yet, so we don't talk about those guys yet.
JC, do we feel like South Carolina is going to pick up a quarterback or two to boost the depth in the room? Right? Not to start, obviously, but I mean just to.
I do. I think you need to. It's in the works now. People ask me who. I don't know. I mean, there's talk about Grayson McCall from Coastal earlier, but it looks like he's going to go to NC State as he probably should. The NC State backup, MJ Morris, who I don't think's in the portal right now, but if he did get in, that may be a guy. I'm going to use some examples of guys that I think they should target. I'm not saying they will, but AJ Swan and Ken Seals, the two kids that left Vandy, those would be the types of guys I'd kind of see. Look, they're got SEC starting experience. They've both had good moments. They both are talented. They were just at Vandy. And they're the types of guys that if you want to keep Luke Doty at this all-purpose role, to where he's working with the receivers most of the time, not with quarterback, you got a guy that started in the SEC that can come in, learn the offense, and if something, God forbid, happened to Sellers, he can get you out of a game or start some games for you, and you can still go in there and compete. You're not counting on a cross-trained Doty or a guy that's a true freshman in Dante Reno, which is neither one of those situations are ideal. So we'll see exactly who they end up with the quarterback, but I do think they'll get one.
There you have it, JC Shurburtt of the Big Spur inside the Gamecocks. JC, great stuff. I know that was a lot of information in one show, but very informative as always, and appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Keep up the great work and try to take a deep breath or two here in the next couple of weeks, but I know you're working your tail off, so.
Yeah, got an annual Army-Navy game party on Saturday. I'm
Beautiful.
going to. The guy that throws it actually played on the 84 Navy team that beat Carolina. So wow. I catch all kinds of crap from Greg all the time, but he gives out like free Navy swag and stuff, free drinks, stuff like that. So we're gonna hit that up this weekend and enjoy that. We always do. But other than that, I'll be glued to my phone. So here we go.
JC, appreciate you taking the time, man. Looking forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks, Chris.